What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Locked On Pitt podcast. As always, I am your host, Nick Faribaugh, River Pittsburgh Sports Now, Call Games, WPTS Radio, and IMP Productions for ACC Network. And folks, today a very special guest joining me, Stephen Gertz, film analyst for Rivals.com, Panther-Lair. We are talking Nelly Cummings and the transfer of Femi Odukale. It's all coming up today on this episode of the Locked On Pitt podcast.
Are Locked On Pitt, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pitt podcast. And as always, if you are watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, do all that great stuff. As always, thank you for making the Locked On Pitt podcast your first listen every day. And if you are listening to this, make sure to leave a review in there. I will now welcome in Stephen Gertz from Rivals. Stephen, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Nick. How about yourself?
I'm doing really well on this fine Saturday morning. And obviously, yesterday was Friday, and that was... I know we've had eventful days in Pitt basketball recently, Stephen, but that was about as eventful a day, I think, as we've had in recent memory in terms of Pitt basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have one guy coming, one guy saying he's staying, and one guy going. So, quite a bit, all within a couple hours, I believe. So, yeah, definitely a lot of fervor yesterday.
For sure. And that is obviously the topics of discussion. I mean, they lose Femi Odukale, Jamarius Burton stays, and they gain Nelly Cummings. And I think the big thing that everyone's talking about, though, even though they lost Odukale, is Nelly Cummings, the local Pittsburgh guy from Midland, PA, Lincoln Valley grad, coming home, trying to essentially, if you will, reclaim Pitt basketball to what it was. Well, Stephen, I just want to kind of get first reactions from when you first saw it. I mean, what about Nelly Cummings sticks out?
Well, we talked last time, Nick, about the need for Pitt to have a point guard. So I think part of that is, and I think we both put that out on Twitter to people about what that means and the definition of that. I think what Nelly Cummings brings is a feel of control and the ability to stabilize the offense. I think you're going to get things from him like tempo control. And one of the things I highlighted the most is, I mean, as we all know, Pitt pretty much starts and ends their possessions with ball screens with, sometimes a lot of stagnation in between. And Cummings is very good in those situations. So I think he's going to be a catalyst for early actions in ball screens, finding teammates, be able to create on his own. And then also late in the clock, I think him and Burton could also do that. So I think he's going to stabilize the offense. I think he's going to effectively utilize ball screens. There are so many times where either the guards were going too soon or the bigs were going, kind of not setting and trying to exit or go screen too quickly. So it's a little bit on Hugley because I think that's the only big that they have right now in tow. But I think Cummings is definitely going to be able to help everybody in that aspect. And that's going to be a big part of, I think, Pitt's success this year is if he can do that, if he can really be good in ball screens and, again, tempo control.
Yeah, just something they haven't had, as we've kind of talked about. I mean, they really haven't had a guy that can change pace, control tempo. And Cummings, a guy coming from Colgate who has played a little bit more up-tempo at times. He can push the pace a little bit. Again, Pitt's been a very stagnant, slower offense. Got to wonder. And this has been something I've wondered if maybe they're going to speed things up a little bit. Nike Sibande coming back. He's more of an athletic guy. He's an aggressive guy that you can do off dribble, who does all this different types of stuff. He's a very aggressive, kind of go for it type of guy. So I guess when you look at Nelly Cummings now coming, he is going to be that point guard. I mean, he said as much that he is expected to be the point guard. And there has been a lot of talk, I guess, in Pitt, the universe, if you will, among fans and everything. Nelly Cummings is not a true point guard. And I think it's true. I mean, he's not a traditional point guard. Like, he's not a pass-first facilitator. But I think in the modern basketball game, I mean, he's about as true a point guard as you're going to get, right?
Well, I think so in some sense. I mean, if you turn on that Navy Colgate Patriot League championship and you look, I mean, they're up 21 at a point, Colgate, like early in the second half. It looks like this thing's going to be done. Navy makes a big run, and a lot of it was Cummings on the bench. When he comes back in, they're able to break the press break. They're able to get into their offense. They're getting a flow. He hits a big layup to kind of, I think, put him up 7 or 8 again later in that game about 5 minutes ago. So in that sense, he is a point guard, right? You want a guy to be able to do that. You want a guy that's going to calm everything down. But I think what people get lost into is that the assist numbers don't pop out. And the assist rate isn't necessarily super high, but he played in the second highest 3-point field goal percentage team in the country with a Swiss Army knife that's like a Boston version of Gordon Hayward in Tucker Richardson, and also a very heady point guard and another off guard in Jason Ferguson, who also averaged 2 assists a game. So I think when you look at Pitt's system, no, is he going to be coming in here and probably dropping 7 assists a game in kind of that James Robinson mold that we've talked about before? Probably not. But is he going to function in a system where Capel likes to use multiple guards to handle the ball? I think so. And he is going to be able to do that with Burton, with Nike Sibande.
And so I guess then you look at the backcourt they have right now. I'm assuming they're going to add 1, maybe even 2 more guards to this rotation if they can. How do you like Nelly Cummings? Talk to me a little bit more about kind of the inner workings of how Cummings, Burton, and Sibande are going to work together, because those 3 are obviously the big 3 they have right now in the backcourt, along with Hugley. How do you feel those 3 working together? Are they good together? Do they work off each other well in Capel's system?
I think they can. I mean, I do think, Cummings has to be the catalyst there in a lot of ways. I think what you see with Nelly Cummings is he obviously is a very good shooter. I mean, he holds a career 3-point average closer to 36%. That career average would have slotted him in, I believe, 4th in the ACC last year. Now, he's never averaged 2 3-pointers in a per game in any of his seasons, but he's close. Last year was like 1.9. So I think his ability to shoot, and I saw a little bit of his off ball activity in some of his last 2 games, is very good. So I think that those are, when you can shoot, when you handle the ball, you're going to be able to do a lot of things in the offense. I think Burton is decent in ball screens. I think you saw him snake a lot of those out. He has that mid-range game. And then Nike's like a really good release, right? I mean, he attacks closeouts if they can bend the defense. And that's, I think, both Cummings and Burton are pretty good against bent defenses towards defending them. Then you could see Nike kind of getting that kick out pass, immediately attack that closeout. I think he probably has, if he's not the best shot creator, because we haven't seen him in a year, he's probably 2 behind Cummings. And so those guys can play off each other well offensively. I think defensively, there's going to be a few more questions in that regard. But offensively, as long as they don't do your turn, my turn, it really has to be one guy to initiate that. And I do believe it's Cummings. I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing. If they're going to be ball stoppers, I think that'll be an issue. They need to get the ball movement going. And I think that'll be the thing to watch with Nelly Cummings. Obviously, a guy that can do both penetrating. Obviously, Nike Sibande is really good at that too. He's a shot creator. He can facilitate. My biggest concern, I guess, right now when I look at it is, I know we talk about Sibande's traits. Is he going to be the same athlete he was coming off that ACL? Because I don't think his whole game was built on athleticism, but I think a lot of what he brought to the table was aided by his really dynamic explosiveness and some really high-level short area athleticism that could potentially be lost with that ACL, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good observation, Nick. He, to me, is the Jordan Clarkson of the group, right? And his athleticism is a very big part of his game, because I think some of his efficiency numbers were a little inflated if you look at the kind of half a year he was here. I mean, those 3 3-pointers I think he made against Wake Forest that like hit the back of the rim, go 2 feet above the backboard and fall in. He had a couple of those. He banked one of those in, right? So some of his efficiency was a little bit misleading, but you're right. A lot of that's athleticism. And if he can't attack those closeouts, which collapses the defense, it's one of the few ways without a lot of shooters that Pitt can create space. If that is lost, then, his value for the team is certainly diminished. So it'll definitely be something to look out for.
Yeah, and certainly something to look out for. We'll continue talking Cummings here. But first, let me let you guys know about Built Bar, because, folks, I know spring is coming around the corner. That means you're going to want to get healthy and get right. And Built Bar can be the protein bar for you. Built Bar is made of 100% real chocolate and tastes just like a candy bar. They also have the special Built Bar Puffs, which is the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. But here's the catch. You also get all the health benefits of a regular protein bar: low in calories, low in sugar, low in net carbs, high in protein. You get the taste of a candy bar while getting the health benefits of a protein bar. So all you have to do right now is go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, and go check that out, folks. It's the promo code LOCK15 at built.com. All right, folks, welcome back to the Locked On Pitt podcast, talking here with Stephen Gertz. And Stephen, I know we talked a little bit about this and Nelly Cummings coming here. So talk to me now about what you think Pitt needs in specifically the backcourt. Obviously, they need a ton in the front court. The only guy there is John Hugley. They need a starting power forward or a starting center, whichever they try to choose. to put Hugley in. But what do they need in the backcourt now? Obviously, they lose Femi Odukale, they lose Ithiel Horton. What do you see? The shooting, I think, is the obvious one. There seems to be, to me, a little bit lack of defensive capability in this unit as well. I mean, what do you see them adding here if they're going to add one or two guys to the backcourt to maybe round this out quite nicely?
Well, I think they need a guy like Tucker Richardson. It's funny, I put on a lot of tape to watch Nelly Cummings over the last couple of games, and the guy that really pops out, aside from isolating Cummings, is Tucker Richardson. I mean, he was first team All Patriot, and he was first team All Patriot League defensive as well. So, I mean, that's kind of that Swiss Army knife Gordon Hayward guy. Now, you remember, like Utah Gordon Hayward and Boston Gordon Hayward, very good defender, but he also was a decent ball handler and extremely good connector. And I think that's what Pitt misses offensively is, Cummings played in a system that really promoted ball movement, and a big part of that is him, and a big part of that is Richardson's ability to connect guys. So it's not necessarily, it's kind of like the hockey assist, right? So do they have that guy? No, they don't. They don't really have that guy. So that's going to be a big thing on offense to promote ball movement. You mentioned defense, that as well. I mean, at the end of the season, I don't know what it was. Maybe those guys just all lost gas, but they basically just bled middle and dribble penetration all over the place. So, Cummings, I thought that he did a decent job with that, but, not having, and we've talked about this as well, not having the Audis Tony, like not having the dude you could just throw on somebody and say, okay, forget about this guy. Now, Jeffress' profile is a little bit like that, but unless he improves his offense, it's going to be hard to put him on the floor a lot. So, they need to find that defensively, and they also need to find a guy that's going to be a good connector and promote ball movement, because Nike, Burton, and Cummings, to an extent, do look to attack sometimes more than they look to facilitate.
Yeah, that's been the issue, and I think with Ithiel Horton leaving, they also kind of lost a guy that was just willing to just do it, shoot the ball. I think they need shooting, and so when you look at guys like Jason Roche that they're looking at, which I think is a really intriguing option, I think that would be a nice land. I think that there are guys that they can get that as you mentioned, could fill that void. But I guess as it stands right now, do you consider all four guys they have, if they are to say try in 2022-23, if they are to try and make that magical year run, that year turnaround like a Miami did, a Wake almost did it, if they are to suddenly become a bubble team, NCAA tournament team, whatever, can all four of these guys to you at least fit together nicely as puzzle pieces as four to potentially promote that?
I mean, it's hard. I think it's hard to say only because, where's Nike at right now? How quickly can they come on the court? I thought an advantage the team was going to have last year was that all those guys were here early and they were all working out together. And you saw that on social media a ton. You heard that from the guys during interviews, that there was a togetherness. They were all working out together. And that didn't necessarily materialize, right? They literally lost the first game of the season. So, is that going to be the case? I don't know. I think there are so many defensive questions, and none of Cummings, but none of the other guys are really a good enough shooter to really make me believe that they can they probably, repeat what last season was. And I know that's not really a vote of confidence, or that's not really probably something the Panther fans are looking to hear. I could see that, but, Hugley's got to take a couple steps forward, especially, defensively. Conditioning has to be good. Like, I think we all saw, for whatever reason, after that 3-game run, it's like there's nothing left. Right. Like that was their NBA finals series, 3 games or something. And that was it. So they have to be more conditioned to do that. No, I don't really see it. I mean, they need that other piece. I mean, if you threw Mo Gee back in that mix as that other guy, well, then I could we could have a conversation. But until that 5th piece is in there, I'm not sure, to your question, if the 4 is good enough to take a prominent step forward.
Well, I think, and I said this as much yesterday before they landed Nelly Cummings in an episode where I said they had to land Nelly Cummings. I think that ideally, personally, I think they should at least get 2 starters in this lineup. I would personally want one of Sibande or Burton to the bench. Ideally, I think Burton to the bench would be best, because I think with he's got this physical style of play where he takes a lot of bumps. He tries to really bruise guys down in the paint when he drives, and he tries that mid-range jumper. Does it with a lot of physicality. Obviously, takes a million charges. And so he plays with a physical style of play. And he kind of, with the 35, 40 minutes he was playing, he can do it. I felt like he got worn down a lot. And that's when you saw towards the end of the year when his play kind of fell off. Felt like he was just running on tired legs and got worn down. So he's a guy maybe I would look to be maybe the 6th man, where he would have a 20 to 25 minutes. And if he's on, you can push that up, obviously, as you see fit. But I think ideally you add that power forward, obviously, or a center, whatever you're trying to do. And then you add probably someone else, either a wing or another guard to the lineup, and push one of the three guards they have right now, probably Burton, I think, to the bench personally.
I mean, I think that's a good assessment, especially in terms of what Burton brings as maybe more of that combo guard that does have more lead guard skills than Nike. He could certainly come off the bench and you could spell a lot of minutes there. So you could have a Burton Nike lineup. You could have all three lineup. You could have even a Nelly Burton lineup. But I think it definitely establishes a 1 and a 2 in the starters, I think, to your point. And then, yeah, that other guy has got to be like a guard forward. I'm thinking, in my mind, I'm thinking like a 6'5", 6'6" type of wing guy who could really defend, really could shoot it. I mean, everybody's looking for that. But that would be the ideal fit. And then again, Mo Gee, what do you do with Hugley? If Hugley slots in as a 5, I think you need a guy like Gee. If Hugley slots in more as the 4, you hope that he's stretching his perimeter skills. And then that 5 has got to be, I'm going to throw out some good names here, but you get a Baycock, you get a Mark Williams type. Obviously, those guys are next level players, but something like that as a rim protector, I think would be obviously big additions. And you don't have to obviously get those, guys that are that good. They're not going to come, but if you get, Efton Reed's back out there, right? So there's some other names here. So we'll see what they end up doing, but I would agree with that. I think somebody has to come in and offset the 3 guards. I don't think if you start those 3 guards, we're not Villanova. I don't think it's going to work to their benefit.
Yeah, and I would agree with that overall. Again, and this is why, they got done with the Zoom interview yesterday with Jason Roche from the Citadel. I think he's the type of guy. Now, I don't know how much you've watched of Roche. Obviously, you saw him when they played Pitt, but he feels like the type of guy we were kind of talking about that could shoot a 40% three-point shooter this year. He kind of feels like if there is a guy that would naturally fit in, a guy that is 6'5", he's got 4 years of eligibility left, had a really nice year, feels like the type of guy you're kind of talking about to fit in there as potentially that wing guardish type of player.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously they played extremely well when they were here. I think what I always pause, and I haven't mentioned a ton of shooting. Shooting is a very obvious need, but when I look within the system and what Capel and staff kind of put together, it doesn't really highlight a lot of shooters, right? It's not really a system where you're seeing shooters thrive, and that goes down to a little bit of ball movement. Some of that goes to the sets they run. The screening's not great. The off-ball screening usage isn't great. I mean, you could see that with Horton. He had to really work to get open shots and to be open, and sometimes then he was still jumping up and down with his hands up and down. Ryan Murphy several years ago in the same boat. So they do need that, and absolutely, I agree with you. He would profile as a perfect fit. Capel needs to figure out and staff how to use these guys. If they get them, it can't just be put in the corner and just suck your guy to that corner. That's how they used a lot of guys, and that wasn't great. So, and hopefully Cummings has influence on that because he is coming from a system where that was not the case. Agree completely. The system, we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. Indeed, we'll continue to talk through this, and we'll also talk about Femi Odukale. Let me let you know about BetOnline. First is BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, including this week's Master Championships odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And folks, now back here on the Locked On Pitt podcast, we continue to talk through this. And Stephen, I think you made a very interesting point about the system. And I guess this is one of the questions too. You can't really know without landing more guys, but Nelly Cummings could spell a change in, I guess, kind of philosophy for Capel. And I'm not saying he's going to drastically overhaul his system or what he runs. But do you think it's possible that they maybe go a little bit more up-tempo, try to get more spacing, maybe change a little bit of what they're doing to tailor to a more modern game? And the kind of the stuff you're seeing in the NCAA tournament this year feels like a lot different than what you see at Pitt. Is it possible that Nelly Cummings is a sign of maybe a little bit of change coming to what Jeff Capel and staff want to run?
I hope so. Cummings is, you mentioned the up tempo, and Cummings is actually good in transition. He's good as a finisher. He can run the floor well. He can shoot the ball well, but he also pushes the ball up the floor well. And I think if you saw, even in the back, probably 8 to 10 games for Pitt, they really struggled in transition. Guys would dribble the ball too much. They'd give it up too late. They'd give it up way too early. There's a lot of turnovers in transition. I mean, turnovers in transition are kind of a disaster. So, their ability to get up tempo is probably going to be unlocked by Nelly being able to make more plays. He just makes better reads. He can make his own shot. And I think that's going to allow them to take advantage of those opportunities because they really didn't have. I think there was a lot of times where they overshot Hugley. Hugley didn't run all the way to the spot. There was just miscommunications. And for a team that struggled to score, like giving up those 6 or 8 points, and even worse, having a couple of those turnovers lead to points on the other end, that's a pretty big deal. So I think he will be able to do that for sure. What you're seeing in the NCAA, I mean, I see a lot of the stuff that Pitt runs. They just don't run a lot of it very well. Everyone runs some horns. Everyone runs wedge screens. Everyone runs, those types of things, kind of that floppy set. They just, they have to get better at doing that. You hope now you have like 3 fifth-year guards that, there's some influence there, especially with Cummings and Burton together to maybe change the tide here. And I really think Hugley's a winner. I really think he's putting in the time, and Jefferson, Santos strike me as good kids. And not to say that anybody left isn't, but, it's kind of a clean slate. Got to fill it up. You obviously got to fill the roster, but it is once again kind of a cleaner slate, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think for Jeff Capel in this year, starting with that clean slate is about as best of an opportunity as you can. Again, not that they didn't lose quality players, rather have kept Collier. I think Femi certainly has upside, and also Horton certainly has his things, but he does have a clean slate with a ton of open scholarships to kind of reshape this roster in whatever vision he wants to do it. But let's talk about Femi Odukale leaving a little bit. They lose Femi Odukale, and this one, ideally I was hoping they would keep Femi Odukale because, again, I think he has really good upside, and I think wherever he goes is going to end up being a really good player for them. This one kind of stings, and I thought he could do a lot of interesting things with Nelly Cummings, so not unexpected at all. I expected him to go. It was kind of already out there before the season was over, but certainly I think a transfer that kind of stinks for Pitt.
Yeah, I don't think, Femi and Horton for sure, and even Collier. I mean, those aren't guys you're really trying to lose because I think it's going to add depth. But, I think you put it out there too. Some guys want something different. And if those roles are going to be reserve roles, if the vision was Cummings, Sibande, starting in Femi, Horton in some type of rotational role, I mean, you could see a scenario where those guys are like, okay, well, I want something else. If Collier wasn't going to break the front court rotation starting with nobody left except for Hugley, then, you could see that too. So Femi's a big loss, though. I think there's times where you've watched him play in some of those big scoring outings. People use like kind of the Shea comparison last year. Obviously, that's extremely complimentary. I think, most people talk in like a very poor man's collegiate version. But certainly the seeds were there. I think he was a capable scorer. I think the issue was, he's a counter driver that needed a lot of space, and Pitt doesn't have a lot of space for him to just kind of go ISO with nobody able to help immediately. Not really a twitchy athlete, more of a guy that can get in the lane, use his size, his length, those types of things. And, but scoring is at a premium. And I think, you lose, you look at, 11 points isn't a ton, but, that's 11 points that Pitt probably needed to even lose games. So it's a blow. I think defensively, his perimeter defense, not great, but he was good as a low man. I think I put that out there yesterday. I mean, there was some value, and that allowed them to hide Horton. That might allow them to hide, a Nike or Burton at times this year, which now they don't have. So, he's certainly someone who I agree had a lot of upside and, some unrealized potential. He was a consistent shot away from being a pretty good player.
Yeah, and again, a lot of his peripherals in terms of 3-point percentage that went up this year, mid-range percentage, I think that those all went up. So he did become a better shooter this year. And again, he's still a young player. He's only a sophomore, going to be a junior. So that screams good to me. I mean, that shows improvement. And so if he's actually going to improve and get a better shot, I think we're talking about a potential star here if he goes somewhere. I think naturally he's going to go somewhere like Seton Hall or St. John's, and I think that would be a great fit for Femi Odukale. But Pitt now, again, as we talked about before, the defense, it's not great right now. Burton has his good things in terms of defense. I think he's a great transition defender. I think, though, Sibande has his drawbacks. Nelly Cummings has his strengths with his drawbacks. Same with Hugley. How do they strengthen this defensive core? Obviously, the wing shooter type, the 3-and-D type they need. But I think, there's a need for a shot blocker. There's a need for better perimeter defense, even in the backcourt. I mean, there is a lot of need here. And you really, if you were going to be that NCAA tournament team, you don't want to compromise a ton of offense. So Will Jeffress, who would be the natural option, he's going to have to get a 3-point shot. So how can they somehow correct these defensive efficiencies that are pretty glaring right now on roster?
Well, I think the big thing is they just bleed, dribble penetration and leads to kickouts, and then they're not really disciplined in the rotations. I think the best teams that have just really just kind of pounded them have been able to penetrate the ball, kick out, rotate the ball, and get open 3-point shots, or they're getting layups at the rim. So when you're getting layups and threes, you're in a really good spot. And Mogi was a big part of deterring a lot of that. Like literally his presence alone, you watch teams start to scheme against him, like trying to pull him out on the perimeter, try to involve him in the ball screen so he wasn't there. I mean, like they would just, I mean, you had a guy you had to literally scheme against. Now you don't. You don't have any guy on the roster, because I don't know if Will's going to log enough minutes where you have to say, okay, we have to find a way to occupy this guy. It starts to me with containing dribble penetration. And a lot of that is, the guards just aren't really good at screen nav. I think Nelly Cummings, I've watched, some film now. He is better at that. But you saw Burton early in the year was able to do it. And, to your point, maybe just took a pounding. You couldn't do it later on in the year. Sibande, his athleticism, again, question mark if that comes back, then he certainly has that ability. But if they don't contain dribble penetration, specifically through the middle, which is usually the first assignment as the weak side slot defender, which would be the other guard, they're just going to kind of bleed again. I don't think the rotations are sharp. You don't see them great in stunt and recovery. You don't see them great in full rotation. I don't think they've ever intentionally X'd out. So they're just not a team that's going to probably make all of those strides in 1 year. And then Hugley and ball screen defense has got to get a little bit better. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. But again, that comes down to when you're carrying like the entire offensive load, how well are you going to be doing this in the 39th minute? Again, so that goes back to depth, which they didn't have. So to get better defensively, they really got to do everything. But Nick, if there was one thing, got to contain dribble penetration a little bit better.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense to me. Way too many guys getting down open lanes. I mean, I remember that Georgia Tech game where it felt like they were easily getting down the lanes with ease. And obviously some of that was transition. But again, you just saw Pitt wear down, I think, as well. And some of the guys were checked out of the season. I could see it happening live. So that's been something that I think is huge. And again, as you said, Pitt's not going to be able to make those strides in one season, but I think if they're going to want to win games, they're going to have to make some strides. If they're going to just do this, and Jeff Capel is going to save his job, and he is going to pull off the season that everyone's talking about, they're going to need to be better defensively. And one last thing I kind of want to bring up, because you've kind of talked about it here, John Hugley needs to take steps. Obviously, already a really good player, a guy that has gone up against some of the ACC's best. He really did a great job against Armando Bacot. What are the steps John Hugley can take? And if he takes those steps, how good are we talking about John Hugley being?
Well, I mean, I think starting with some of the steps that he's already taken. I mean, when you look at his finishing angles early in the season, even the Citadel, those non-conference games, there's a lot of times he's just like a really good player. And so he's making these, like, I'm literally under the basket, falling down, making a hook shot or a shot that goes straight up in the air and goes in. In the end of the season, there's far more patience, right? He wasn't spinning baseline on that right block, turning it over anymore. He wasn't as one-dimensional on the left block where he's going to go into the middle of the floor. And he was allowing doubles to kind of flow in and out. And I think he just really just matured as a player. There's just the natural experience. So I expect that to be in place. I expect him to have a couple more options on both blocks this season. And I think he's going to be able to extend out his range consistently to that 15 feet pinch post area. You watch that at the end of the season where he would kind of post up, get denied, and the guards weren't great at post entry, repost up more at like that high post, kind of that pinch post area, and then he was able to can jumpers. I mean, his jumper was really good by the end of the year. I think that's going to continue. Now, how many should he take, especially how many threes should he take? That's another story. But I think he has to take steps in kind of just offensive variety. His passing's very good. And I think Pitt needs to do a better job of using his gravity, using how they play off him. He got better at double teams. Those are all things I think are going to come naturally. I do feel like he's going to do that. Now, I think I don't know if he's ever going to be above the rim finisher, right? I don't want to say he's not a good athlete. He is a very good athlete, but I think his strength is really his ability to pound and leverage that way. I think if he slims down too much, because I know over the course of the season, you'd hear that, oh, he's 285, he's really 255. I mean, he can't slim down to be like LeBron, right? Like that's just, I know it's his favorite player. That's not going to work. Defensively is where he needs to grow the biggest. I think attentiveness in ball screens. He does do a good job of holding post position, but he's got to be a little bit more varied there. His ability to cover ground, rebound outside of his area isn't quite there. I think that's what they lost with Collier a little bit in limited minutes. He needs to bring that level of activity. But again, if you're carrying the offensive load as much as he is, I don't know if you can expect that. You see that with Justin Champagny now in the in the G League. He's awesome, right? Like, because he doesn't have to do everything, so he's capable of doing more in spurts, and that's kind of on a team thing.
Yeah, and again, I think that's all about depth. All about depth. This team has to be much deeper in 2022-23, and I think that'll help everyone out, regardless of deficiencies or not. It will help them out and help them play as a better unit. The better guys you have around you, usually, the better you will play as a player. All right, Stephen, let them know where they can find your stuff, follow you, read all your work, man.
Yeah, thanks. You can find me at Stephen Gertz, Stephen_Gertz, Stephen with a PH on Twitter. Love interacting with people there. I am in the Panther-Lair forums every now and then, especially if you tag me. And then, obviously my work's getting posted over on Rivals there.
And folks, as always, make sure to check out Stephen's work. He does great stuff over there at Panther-Lair. Always insightful reads, always doing it like no one else is doing it in the Pitt sphere. I really gain a lot of knowledge just from reading his stuff. So make sure to check that out. And folks, as always, thank you for listening to the Locked On Pitt podcast. We will talk a lot of football this week, obviously, with the spring game coming. We'll continue to talk any transfer portal additions and more. So as always, thanks for listening. And as always, hail to Pitt.